this was so negative for this Billy Carson guy that he did a 3-hour video responding to what happened in that debate. Again, it was not a debate. There was no moderator. There was no thesis statement. There was no equal time. Wasn't even close to equal time. The guy whose webcast it is, I think, took up most of the time, actually.
All right, as you guys know, the circus, the clown show of Billy Carson continues to go round and round and make his round through all social media and make his round through all the Christian apologist platforms and so forth, right? As you know, I've done several videos on this whole fiasco of Billy Carson and his ridiculous response to the debate with Wes Huff. And so obviously, as time progresses, these type of debates eventually make their way to the most senior guys in the apologetic realm. One being James White, and on a recent installment of Alpha and Omega Dividing Line show on YouTube and Twitter X, Dr. James White decided to comment on the Wes Huff Billy Carson debate and sort of the aftermath of the debate, and sort of give his input of what he thought about the debate. And so in this video, we're going to interact with what Dr. James White has said. And so let's check it out and let's see what Dr. James White has to say concerning this Billy Carson fiasco. Let's jump into it.
16-minute video that I listened to first this morning as I started my drive. And it was a guy. Evidently what happened is this was so negative for this Billy Carson guy that he did a 3-hour video responding to what happened in that debate. And again, it was not a debate. There was no moderator. There was no thesis statement. There was no equal time. Wasn't even close to equal time. The guy whose webcast it is, I think, took up most of the time, actually.
And he did. I mean, he has to be one of the worst hosts of any podcast I've ever seen. He was absolutely terrible. And once again, like I said in my video, it was a 2v1. It was a 2 versus 1 for the most part of the debate, for sure. Or the conversation, because it really wasn't even a debate like Dr. James White said.
Especially toward the end. But, so it wasn't a debate. It was a discussion. And this Billy Carson guy, I'm pretty sure someone sent me a clip of this fellow talking about something, I don't know, about 6 months ago. And I just remember watching it going, what? This guy didn't have a clue what he's talking about when he's talking about the Bible. I mean, what? It was sort of like almost a Black Hebrew Israelite thing with space aliens thrown in for the fun of it. It was, I think I bookmarked it. I don't think I ever got around to commenting on it. I don't think I did. But I'm pretty sure it was the same guy. And evidently, he's making bank with all this stuff that he does about ancient civilizations, and he travels around the world, and he throws all this stuff together, and so this guy did this 16-minute video where he summarizes Carson's attempt to do damage control. And that's where I learned a lot about him. Because there's this whole section where he's mocking the people who he feels are attacking him. He says they're all poor. He's not just a worker bee. He brags a lot about, the places he stays and the billionaires that he knows, and it's really a massive turnoff. It's just like, ugh, okay.
And it was, man. I mean, even in the comments of the live chat of his response video, people were unsubscribing. And even in the comments, people were telling him to stop attacking Christians. They were telling him this, but he kept doing it. And as Dr. James White said, it was a complete turnoff, not only for the Christians watching, but his own followers, his own supporters were like, shut your mouth, be quiet. You make yourself look like a fool. and he was bragging about all his luxuries, elevators, 5 ACs, his movie theater, all that stuff. He was just bragging.
And but lo and behold, he's telling people, I'm going to sue these guys. I'm going to sue the guy who the Mark Menard. And look at the beginning of the thing. They're just great buddies, and Menard supported him in a lot of stuff that he was saying. Menard claims to be a Christian, but he's clearly massively confused, doesn't understand the Old Testament. He doesn't hold Jesus's own view of Scripture. Okay, he's created Jesus that he really, really likes, but that never existed. It's a Jesus of emotion. It's a Jesus who makes me feel good, but it's not the Jesus of Scripture. And so he wasn't, Wes was going up against two different positions with these guys.
Yeah, and Mark, his wife is a Muslim, so that should tell you everything you need to know. Like, if a Christian marries a Muslim, he really doesn't believe what he think he believes. He really doesn't believe or understand what he claims he believes. That lets you know right there. If you're married to a Muslim, my goodness, you're a Christian married to a Muslim and you claim you believe in Jesus. Wow, crazy stuff. With the Jesus of the Bible, crazy stuff, right? Absolutely nuts.
But he's talking about suing for $1 million. And you're like, like I said at the beginning, it's Barry Lynn all over again. Wow, okay. Certainly means that no one's ever going to engage him again, nor should they, given his behavior. But then he's coming up with all these excuses. I had pneumonia, and I was in the hospital, and I still had a Band-Aid on my arm from the IVs and all the... And maybe that's true. I don't know, but I certainly couldn't tell it.
Right.
And he certainly never made any reference to it. And as the guy who made the video pointed out, the arguments he was using about the stuff they were supposed to be talking about are found in all of his videotapes before this.
Right, right.
So, what happened in the conversation? Well, and this is what I would say to Wes.
Oh man.
He first of all did a great job. Was very patient. Probably more patient than I would have been. Especially toward the end. I think Wes got cut off for like 6 or 7 minutes because the two of them were just hammering away on the Old Testament and the God of the Old Testament. They were being great Gnostics. Yeah. And Wes was trying to explain basic hermeneutics, and neither one of them would even touch with a 10-foot pole. No, not interested in that at all. We've made up our decisions, and we've made our decisions. We're sticking with it. So anyway, right at the start, the big thing was that this Billy Carson guy says that Jesus was not crucified. And when you hear someone say that, two things cross our mind. Have they been influenced by Islam? Surah 4:157 in the Quran, they did not crucify him. It was made to appear to them, and that's understood different ways by Muslims. Have they been influenced somehow by Islam? And are they aware that even the most radical skeptics, John Dominic Crossan, for example, Bart Ehrman, they'll all say the same thing. The most sure historical fact about Jesus' life is his crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. They may question everything else about Jesus' life, but the one thing that's really not questionable is the crucifixion.
And these are skeptics saying this, man. These are skeptics that say this, and for someone to come along, and a person of Billy Carson to come along and give some fringe ridiculous view that Jesus was not crucified, or the Bible says Jesus was not crucified, or the crucifixion is not historically reliable, that's absolutely insane. That shows an incredible level of inaccuracy. I mean, you got little Christian skeptics saying that historically speaking, there's no denying the historicity of Jesus' crucifixion. No denying it. But yet you have guys like Billy Carson that say, "Oh, it didn't happen." Absolutely insane. Absolutely incredibly insane.
And so I'm like, okay, I'll be interested to see how this pans out. So Carson says, well, the crucifixion isn't found in the Sinai Bible, which is much earlier than the King James Bible.
Hey, you guys gotta laugh with me, man. James White facial expressions are absolutely hilarious, man. And you'll see him throughout this commentary, is that James White facial expressions kill me, man. I'd be cracking up, guys. It's so funny to me.
Now, I can guarantee you that I know what was probably going through Wes's mind at that point, and he said he'd been listening to stuff, so I'm sure he wasn't surprised. But when you hear someone say something like that, they have just said to you, I know nothing about the history of the Bible, but I'm going to make dogmatic statements about it anyways, and probably enjoy it while I'm doing it.
And I think that was sort of Wes Huff's way of going about it, was that, yes, Wes Huff, he asked questions like diagnostic questions, and sort of questions that sort of, seeing what Billy Carson was saying. But I think Wes Huff understood, like, I'm going to let him eat himself up, right? I'm going to let him destroy himself, if you will, because anybody with a reasonable understanding of manuscripts and things like that understand, like, Billy Carson don't know what he's talking about. Like, Billy Carson's a complete dummy when it comes to this stuff. And I think that's sort of Wes Huff was kind and gentle, right? He was kind and gentle, but I think Wes Huff knew that Billy Carson would destroy himself. He would eat himself. In other words, Wes Huff's job was actually pretty easy to do, right? Not that Wes Huff didn't have to know his stuff. Wes Huff understood his stuff, and he interjected it when need be. But I think Wes Huff sort of knew, like, man, Billy Carson's going to destroy himself with this nonsense, So I think that's sort of what some of what happened anyway.
Because there is no such thing as a Sinai Bible. He was talking about Codex Sinaiticus. And Codex Sinaiticus, I was told, I saw someone else made a comment that Wes turned around and pulled his facsimile of Sinaiticus. Now, that baby weighs at least 45 pounds. I mean, and when we go to the side camera in the studio, in the regular studio back in Phoenix, mine's down behind me, where the 1550 Stephanos is. And I don't think Wes has a 1550 Stephanos. Sorry, bro. Maybe someday. But because I know you'd like one. Anyway, he pulls out Sinaiticus, and I can only imagine that Billy Carson's like, uh-oh.
I think that's what happened, though. I think he saw Wes Huff reach back there in his bookshelf, and Billy Carson stomach probably flipped upside down, because he knew at that point he wasn't dealing with some Joe Schmo. Billy Carson knew at that point he was dealing with a scholar. He was dealing with a brilliant individual when he saw him pull that thing off the shelf, man. And Billy Carson, from that point forward, because that part happened early in the conversation. So from that part forward, the conversation was relatively over. I think sort of Wes Huff was just there to correct error at that point. But the conversation, as far as a debate is concerned, was over and done for, right? At that point, it was completely over.
Because he's been saying it wrong in video after video after video after video after video. He clearly doesn't even know what it is.
Yeah.
He does not know it is, yes, the earliest complete Bible that we have. Not in both original languages, because it's in Greek all the way through, but when it was discovered, it was certainly the earliest Septuagint that we had, the Old Testament in Greek. And together with Vaticanus was known before Sinaiticus, but they're probably contemporaneous as far as their dating between 325 and 350. So all he has to do is say, and the crucifixions throughout Codex Sinaiticus. I guess Carson tried to say, well, it's not in his 3-hour rebuttal video. It's not in, the Sinai Bible doesn't have the long writing of Mark. Well, long writing of Mark contains the resurrection story, but not the crucifixion. The crucifixion part of Mark is right there in Sinaiticus, as it is in Matthew and Luke and John. And the references to Christ crucified are found all through Paul, and he's just been wrong all along. Mm-hmm. Don't know where he got it. It did seem, in light of what he immediately defaulted to, that at some point in the not too distant past, Billy Carson ran into some Islamic Dawah material online and heisted it. Just borrowed it wholesale. Because once Wes is sitting there holding Codex Sinaiticus, says, it's in here. He goes, I misspoke. He didn't misspeak.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Right.
All of his videos had said the Sinai Bible. He had repeated this over and over again. It almost made me think of Ergen Cantor. See, this is called a microphone. You talk into it. It records things. You can't just go, I misspoke, when you've misspoken 25 times on videos that you still have on your YouTube channel. That's
right. And it just really makes no sense. This is how you know Billy Carson was a complete and utter fool when it comes to this stuff. Oh, I misspoke. No, you didn't. You knew exactly what you're saying. You know exactly. We got ample amount of footage and archive footage of you saying the same thing over and over again to your audience, and your audience fall for it every single time. So don't sit here and say that, it was a mistake. It wasn't no mistake. You know exactly what you're saying. Exactly what you're saying. You thought you thought that you ran into a Joe Schmo in West Huff, and so you thought you'd be able to get away with it again. That's the problem. And once you realized you couldn't get away with it again, then you shifted and said, I misspoke. So
it's not misspeaking. You were in error.
Right.
You were wrong. Big time wrong.
And instead of being a humble individual and say, you know what, my bad. Thank you for the correction, Wes. I'll look and do my scholarly work. I'll do my work more accurately next time. I'll fix all my errors. He doubles down on it. And shows just a lack of pride. This dude, Billy Carson, is a complete and utter narcissist. He's a prideful narcissist of the max level that you can calculate narcissism.
So he goes, I didn't mean Codex Sinaiticus. I meant that I kept this big, huge unit on the road. I didn't even hit the rumble strips. He goes, I meant the Gospel of Barnabas. Okay. It's an abject forgery. And I've had Muslims bring it up in debates, of course. And, normally it comes up to where you only have the opportunity of responding to it in rebuttal. Rebuttal periods are notoriously short, so you can only say so many things, but it's a complete forgery. And it's embarrassing that anyone would ever make reference to it as if it has anything to do with the contemporary period of Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection. Now, what was interesting is Billy Carson, as soon as he pulled out Sinaiticus, he said something along the lines of, well, I'll go with that. I'll go with what he said, with what Wes said about Sinaiticus obviously containing testimony of the crucifixion of Christ. And then he switched over to the Gospel of Barnabas. And as soon as Wes is like, yeah, that's even worse for your case, because now you're talking about something that's clearly forged and fraudulent.
Yeah.
He did not even try to make a defense. It's pretty impossible to do so anyways, but he didn't even try. He said, well, let's talk about the Old Testament. And Wes is like, whoa. Meow. Sort of hard to stay with one particular train of thought there.
I mean, but that's the typical tactic between when someone's getting refuted and someone can't respond to something. They want to shift it. They want to move it. They want to shift the goalposts. They want to move what they're talking about. They don't want to talk about the subject matter. You would think that Billy Carson was very aware, very able to talk about this, being that he's dogmatically taught this throughout the years and deceived many. You would think that he'd be well-rounded in this conversation. But once again, when he went into West Huff, he realized that he didn't have that capability. So he wanted to transition the conversation. He wanted to get out of there. Let's go talk about the Old Testament, though. Let's get out of there. Nah. Crazy stuff, guys. Crazy stuff.
He just knew he couldn't defend this stuff. So it was, I guess he had to leave at some point. And like I said, what has happened since then, I cannot possibly imagine that any attorney would take this case and file these charges. Because when you're doing it civilly, you're open to counter suits. And what he said in that 3-hour thing, just the clips that were played by this other fellow, more than enough to utterly obliterate any case that could possibly be made, and therefore to open the possibility for a countersuit being highly successful. So I don't think anything is going to come of it. But it does tell you a lot about, this guy's got money to protect. He's got.
Yeah. And I mean, and just imagine how many Christians he would have to sue in order for that legal process to even take place. Right. I mean, he would get counter lawsuit after counter lawsuit after counter lawsuit. Billy Carson don't want that kind of attention. And as Dr. James White's about to go into, Billy Carson has too much money at stake. And that's why he's responding in the fashion that he's responding. He cannot look like a fool. He's already done that, right? He's already done that. I think it would have been better for him to just, land this one and sort of humbly admit his wrong and move forward. But no, he had to double down. And now he's in a predicament that he's in.
Followers to protect. And so there's always been that historically. Paul said to the Ephesian elders, there's going to be people who arise from amongst you, drawing disciples away after themselves. Quite true, but now it's become multiplied in the social media realm. Someone who is dependent upon that kind of income from having followers, that's going to impact how they behave, what they say, what they're willing to say and not say. And really, it has a huge negative impact upon the truth content of what they're saying.
Yep. And that's why Billy Carson doubles down and says the thing he says. He's been proven wrong about the Sinai Bible. He's been shown to be in error. But he will double down on it because he has an interest to protect. He has a monetary, financial substance there to protect. He has to protect that, right? He has to protect what his idol is, which is finance and lying, right? He has to protect that. And so he's going to do whatever he can to protect it. Whether it's lie, cheat, or steal, he's going to do whatever he can to protect it. And that's what we're seeing with him right now. That's why he wants to sue, because he's trying to protect his money. He's trying to protect his interest. That's what he wants to do.
And there are good people who do that. And then there are people who are obviously just attacking Christianity, which is what Billy Carson's doing. He certainly has very strong anti-Christian views. So my congratulations to Wes Huff. It was very satisfying to hear someone, knows the difference between the Gospel of Barnabas and the Epistle of Barnabas, and so yeah, that's exciting to see, because as I said, I'm not getting any younger, so it's neat to see that kind of thing.
And you have to remember, Dr. James White, when he speaks of like this, and he's giving Wes Huff his flowers, if you will, he's saying, congratulations, great job. He's giving Wes Huff his flowers, right? He's saying that he did a great job, a fantastic job. And I think the reason that Dr. James White really enjoys this is because for many years, he's been the only Christian apologist, worth their salt, really out there defending these areas, right? Defending these areas of Christianity. Not to say there hasn't been any out there. What I'm saying is that on the stage that he has, the popularity that he has, the ability to interact in the subject matter in a satisfying manner and at a very high level, he's probably been top tier, right? And so when he sees someone who shows that same top tier capability of interacting with this particular subject matter, I think it excites James White. I think he's encouraged, because one of James White's, not really a concern, but I think what James White really desires is for other people to start coming up and stepping into these areas, these very difficult, problematic, complicated areas of apologetics. And this is one of those areas. And so I think James White really appreciates Wes Huff for that. I really do think he does.
Out there, and to see it done so well, with the patience in trying to explain, even though he did not get the opportunity to even finish his points on hermeneutics. The host just almost
terrible,
visceral response to his attempt to explain what Paul was saying to the Ephesians, and God wouldn't do that if he wanted the Bible to be read by people in other places. And just wow, these guys don't realize the presuppositions they have that they have accepted without ever having examined them.
I mean, Mark is married to a Muslim, so that should tell you, and he calls himself a Christian. That should tell you everything you need to know about his theological backdrop, and his theological beliefs. And Mark was absolutely horrendous host. Oh my goodness, man. I mean, he's given a bad name to all podcast hosts, right? He was absolutely trash. He was terrible, annoying, long-winded, rambling, make no sense. Everything under the sun. He was that's bad as a podcaster. He was it. And so it was, once again, it was a 2v1, 2 versus 1, because certainly Mark, as Dr. James White said, Mark had a very vitriol, angry, frustrating response to what Wes Huff was saying. So terrible.
Whatever having thought through them. It's pretty amazing. So
yeah, that is Dr. James White's response to the debate. And yeah, it was interesting to say the least. And I'm glad Dr. James White chimed in on it. Always enjoy hearing his opinion of what he thought concerning the debate, or the conversation, discussion, however you want to say it. Yeah, and Dr. James White had pretty much the same response, right, as most of us have to this whole fiasco, this circus of Billy Carson. And yeah, I mean, if there's anything to glean from this, is that, Wes Huff once again did a fantastic job, and it's always awesome to see the more senior guys, the guys who've been doing it far longer, probably been doing it been done it probably before Wes Huff was born, and many of us was born, been doing it for quite some time. And it's always cool to see those individuals sort of give flowers when they're due, right? To congratulate individuals that come along and perform at such a high level. And I can tell you this, Wes Huff, if you ever hear this, when you get your flowers from when you get flowers from Dr. James White, or you get that congratulations, Dr. James White, because of how Dr. James White thinks and how he goes about his study and his business, that's a high compliment. You may get a compliment from me and say, hey, what's up, great job. But when you get a compliment from Dr. James White, man, it goes pretty far. Dr. James White really, he doesn't hand out compliments in that fashion too often. So when you get it, you really appreciate it. So excellent stuff. But all that said, guys, if you have yet to do so, make sure you subscribe to The Gospel Truth and hit that notification bell so you miss out on the shows that are coming up here in the future. So with all that said, may God bless you and may God keep you.